at the old ball game.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to another edition of Cess's Corner. And folks, let me say this. The gentleman to my left, your right, of course, there are so many different ways in which I can introduce this gentleman, okay? I'm not really sure what the appropriate introduction would be, to be very honest with you. Now, Anthony, perhaps you can help me. Folks, this is Mr. Anthony Florio, a gentleman who I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple years back, who has become a very good friend of mine. This has been about 2 years in the making, and dealing with some logistical challenges and to bring this interview together, but we are finally here. And let me just start off by saying Mr. Florio had the pleasure and privilege of being a bat boy for, of course, our beloved New York Yankees in the early 60s. And we're going to talk about that journey and the book that he has written, chronicling his 3-year incredible experience with the New York Yankees. But with that said, again, Anthony, there are so many different ways that you can be properly introduced. I mean, should I just refer to you as Mr. Anthony Florio? Should I refer to you as the luckiest kid in New York? Because you were, without question, the luckiest kid in New York. Okay, but having, of course, enjoyed reading the book, I mean, should I call you Hot Dog? Should I call you Anthony Shoes? Or all of the above, perhaps? I mean, all I could say is, Anthony, welcome to Cess's Corner. Thank you so much for your time today, for your patience. And here we finally are, and it is such a pleasure to have the opportunity to sit down with you. Welcome again to Cess's Corner. Thank you so much for being here. And I know you're getting ready to, head out down to Florida for, your annual winter excursion. And of course, we're both decked out in our Yankee gear. We're, diehard, beloved Yankee fans. And here we are. And we're so happy to be here. And I'm so happy to finally have a chance to sit down with you. So Anthony, let's just kind of get right into it. There's so much ground to cover. So many different topics related to the experience, but again, you start off the first year in 1962 as the ball boy for the visiting teams,
right?
Okay, and why don't we kind of just start from the beginning? We'll kind of go through, first and foremost, the opportunity comes up through your old high school coach Steve Ray, who had a connection with the Yankees. You get the opportunity at the age of 15, you get the opportunity to go to, Yankee Stadium, the greatest cathedral, not just in the Bronx, but in the world as far as I'm concerned. And like, how are you feeling, like, as this is all, like, beginning to unfold? Like, I mean, like, did you feel like you were in some sort of, like fantasy, like you were afraid you were going to wake up from it and it wasn't going to be true? Like, I mean, kind of let's kind of start there and we'll kind of go through the journey.
Well, first you can call me Anthony, and being born in Little Italy in New York, in Mott Street, Mulberry Street, I've been called a lot of other names too, so feel free to call me Anthony. That's one of the nice ones. As far as the job, obviously, as the book says, it says the luckiest kid in New York, and I definitely was the luckiest kid in New York for 3 years. Getting to travel with the Yankees, being on television shows. I was on To Tell the Truth.
Yep.
I was the real person on To Tell the Truth. I was on
hosted by Bud Collier. Yep.
Yes. I was on Wonderama as a pitchman for some Bat Boy for a Day contest. Yep. With Sonny Fox.
Yep, hosted by Sonny Fox. Yep.
Yeah, and I was on 4 times. I was on the back then. They used to have double headers were regular things, and they used to have a between game show.
Yes.
With Red Barber.
The late great Red Barber, right. One of the greatest broadcasters in baseball history.
Yeah, and I was on that show 4 times.
Yep.
I got some write-ups in the paper that I did a great job. But as far as getting the job, it was it was just a domino effect of so many things happening to be in the right place at the right time. Actually, the first 30 pages of the book are dedicated to how I get to where I'm the ball boy for the Yankees.
Yes.
And the condensed story is, I go to school in the Bronx, New York, to James Monroe High School.
Yep.
I go there illegally because I used a phony address. I went there because my father wanted me to go there. They had the best baseball team. I actually won the city championship. On that team, I hate to say, was one of the enemies. Well, I shouldn't say one of the enemies, but Eddie Kranepool was on that team that I played with. And in the school, there was a gentleman named Steve Ray. And Steve Ray was a scout for the White Sox. And he was also the head of the gym department. And he knew my father because my father managed Sandlot teams. Eddie Kranepool played for my father and got signed off his team. One of the best ball players, well, the best ball player that ever played with my father also got signed off his team was Kenny Singleton, who was, I mean, close to getting Hall of Fame numbers. So
absolutely,
that was a great thing, and I played with Kenny a little bit. But one day I was in the gym where I wasn't supposed to be. This Mr. Ray, like I said, who was the head of the gym department, saw me and said, Florio, I have to send some kids to Yankee Stadium to try out to be bat boys and ball boys for the Yankees. Would you want to go? And, you know, I thought Mr. Ray needed psychiatric help to even ask me a question like that. So
he didn't have to ask you twice.
No, he didn't have to ask me twice. So they sent me, they sent a few other guys, and I know some other schools sent some kids too. And I was lucky enough, for whatever reason, to get picked. The first year I was the ball boy for the Yankees. I was down the first baseline. And when you're the ball boy back then, I have no idea what they do now, you worked in the visiting team clubhouse with all the visiting teams.
Yes.
Well, a year went by, 62, and tremendous experience. And I get a phone call after the season's over that the clubhouse guy wants to see me for the Yankees. And they tell me that the next year I was going to be the bat boy for the Yankees, which was, you know, took about 6 months for my feet to touch the ground, first of all, because it's a completely different thing being the bat boy for the Yankees as opposed to being the ball boy and working in the visiting team clubhouse for obvious reasons. For those 2 years, I was close with Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, Crazy Joe Pepitone, and so many other guys. And just being able to go shag fly balls with Mickey Mantle and have conversations where he made fun of me and all these ball players, and I was like everybody's kid in the clubhouse. And again, the traveling with them, just imagine yourself being 16 and 17 years old, getting to travel with the New York Yankees, and the experiences that I explained some of them in the book, and some of them are quite interesting.
That's putting it mildly, to say the least.
I won't elaborate on that, but if you get your hands on the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. I got to do a few things that a lot of men would have loved to have done. And doing that for a couple of years and getting to meet all these famous people just was, it was the greatest experience that I ever had. And that's why I wrote a book about it.
And speaking of that book, ladies and gentlemen, right here is the book that Anthony Florio wrote along with a gentleman by the name of John Sinclair. And as you can see here, Yankee Bad Boy, the luckiest kid in New York. And the picture on the front of the book here is Anthony, I think probably age 15 or 16, with, of course, his hero, the legendary, late great Yankee legend and Hall of Famer, Mickey Mantle.
Yep. And in the back of the book, this picture, that's me with all the hats on, and that's the team picture, obviously. But that picture was taken and put in the Associated Press just before a World Series. And they made me pose for a couple of pictures and made my mom happy to see us on the papers. But it's, I think it's a good book. I get a lot of comments on it, and I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I'm always available to do these speaking engagements. I actually have a couple booked for Florida now when I go down there. And I've done a ton of them in New Jersey and New York,
yep.
And I've done a couple in Pennsylvania. I've actually had someone's contacted me for this coming summer, wants me to go do one in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it says, will you come to Michigan? I says, if you pay for me to come to Michigan, I'll go to Michigan.
Absolutely.
So that should be very interesting.
I can imagine. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun and another great experience. And folks, I had the pleasure of reading this book from cover to cover. And let me tell you, I was like a kid on Christmas morning, being not just a diehard Yankee fan, but just a diehard traditional old-fashioned baseball fan that I have been since the age of 7. And I turned 50 this past June. Reading through Anthony's experience and all the stories and all the adventures. And I mean, Anthony, not only were you with the Yankees for these 3 incredible, magical years, but you had the opportunity, to be a part of 3 consecutive World Series. Now, granted, the Yankees unfortunately lost 2 out of the 3, winning, of course, the first year in '62, defeating the then San Francisco Giants, who only a few short years before that had left New York to go to San Francisco, where, of course, they are still housed today. And then, of course, 1963, the Yankees are swept by the Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
We don't have to talk about that.
I don't want to talk about it any more than you do, okay? But, I mean, reality is reality. Again, the Dodgers, having a few short years before, moved from Brooklyn to LA, where, of course, they still are today. And, of course, they just got done beating up on our Yankees this past fall, which we don't have to talk about either. But nonetheless, but at the same token, despite the Yankees losing to the Dodgers in '63, you did, and you note this in the book, where you got the opportunity to witness, Sandy Koufax pitch, and you basically say something to the effect of that he may have been the greatest pitcher you've ever seen.
Well, I mean, I saw obviously Juan Marichal pitch, Bob Gibson for the '64 World Series. I saw so many great pitches, including Whitey Ford and other Yankee ball players. But the first inning of the 1963 World Series, the first inning, I saw Sandy Koufax pitch for the first time. And through the next 9 innings, and then in Game 4, I saw him pitch again. As big of a Yankee fan that I am, I never saw anyone that was as good as Sandy Koufax. In the first inning, he threw a curveball to Elston Howard that he must have missed by 2 feet. And I just said to myself, as low as I could, this could be a lot of trouble. And I was right.
And sure enough, it was. The Dodgers swept the Yankees in that World Series. Of course, the Yankees rallied back the following year in '64. Then, of course, managed by the late, great Yogi Berra. Ralph Houck had, moved up to the general manager's position. But the Yankees lose a heartbreaker in 7 games to Bob Gibson and those Cardinals. And then, of course, after that, that concludes your run with the Yankees. And the Yankees end up going into a bit of a downward spiral, beginning in 1965, and of course they would eventually regain prominence later on in the George Steinbrenner era, eventually getting back to the World Series in 1976. And then after losing in '76 to the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine, the Yankees then get revenge on the Dodgers, defeating the Dodgers back-to-back in '77 and '78. But getting back, of course, to you and your incredible experience during the 3 years. Okay, I mean, again, like it says on the, on the front page of the book, you went from Little Italy to the Bronx, Little Italy to, Yankee Stadium. And of course, you were obviously already a diehard Yankee fan, a diehard baseball fan. You basically ate, slept, breathed baseball, day in and day out. I mean, so this opportunity that basically just fell in your lap, like you said, being in the right place at the right time, was right up your alley. And you absolutely made the most of it. The relationships that you formed, the experiences that you had, the stories that you're able to tell, many of which, of course, are, contained in the book, the memories that you have that nobody can take away from you, that you obviously cherish now and will continue to cherish forever, are just off the charts. To say the least. I mean, you talk about the shows you were on, plus the interviews that you had with some of the legendary, sports writers of the day, Dick Young from the Daily News, and then later on Jack O'Brien. And then, of course, the relationships that you built, not just with the ones you mentioned, like Mickey Mantle, of course, but, some of the personal friendships, like with Phil Linz, okay, the legendary harmonica man, former Yankee.
I didn't to interrupt you, but the
No,
harmonica man, if people don't know the story, it's a really interesting story. It's in the book. And it was an incident that happened. I don't want to elaborate on the whole story because it is in the book.
Yes.
But Phil Linz had this incident with Yogi Berra, and I happened to be on the bus. It's a very, very famous story.
Yes, it is.
About what happened. I don't know. You think I should tell the story?
Go right ahead. Listen.
If you haven't heard it, Phil Linz was like a super sub for the Yankees at that time. And we were in Chicago, and we were losing. We lost, I think, 4 or 5 games in a row. And while we were in Chicago, Phil Linz bought a harmonica. Now, the rule of thumb is when your team loses, and again, I'm sure it doesn't apply now like it did then. When you're losing, when you get on the bus to go to the airport after losing 4 or 5 games, just be quiet. There's no happiness. You're supposed to be winning and you're losing. So Phil Linz bought this harmonica, and back then they allowed a couple of reporters, they would give them a lift on our bus to the airport. They wouldn't fly with us, but they'd give them a lift to the airport. And there happened to be 2 reporters on the bus. One of them was from the Daily News and one of them was from the Associated Press. And while we were on the bus, Phil Linz started playing his harmonica. And he didn't know how to play harmonica, and he was horrible. And he's trying to play, and Yogi Berra jumped up from the front of the bus because he was the manager. And he made a suggestion of where Phil Linz should put the harmonica. Take it for what it's worth. Well, he didn't hear him when he said it, so Phil Linz asked Mickey Mantle. He says, what did he say? And Mickey Mantle, being the jokester that he was, said he said to play it louder. So he just kept playing. So as he's playing harmonica, now Yogi Berra is going crazy. He jumps up in front of the bus, jumps up, walks to the back and starts yelling, didn't I tell you what to do with that harmonica? And Phil Linz flips it to him, says, here, what do you want to play it? And that started the whole thing. He swings, he hits the harmonica out of the air, hits Joe Pepitone in the knee. He starts whining, and eventually it all calms down. Now, like I said in the beginning of the story, and that's what makes it a great story, 2 reporters were on the bus. And the next day, it was all over the Associated Press, all over the country about this incident that happened. And it started an uproar. Now, you may have heard the story before, and you may have heard the story with announcers telling the story. It's been told 1,000 times. But nobody knows this part of the story. And I've never heard an announcer in all the years tell this part of the story. From Chicago, we went to Boston. And in Boston, when we got there, because it was all over the papers, they threw little harmonicas on the field at us. And the only reason I know, because I picked up a lot of the harmonicas. So if you hear that story being told, you'll never hear an announcer say that because they weren't there. And that part of the story just kind of faded away. But I was there. And that's the part of the story you'll never hear. But it's really, it's a really fun story. And there's a lot of things like that in the book.
Just one of many, many stories that you tell in the book. But that definitely is one of the ones that perhaps stands out a little bit more than some of the others. Okay, because of, again, the coverage that it ended up getting, and so forth. But it is a classic story. Okay, and it basically from that moment on kind of defined Phil Linz and his legacy. In Yankee lore. Where it still gets talked about, to some degree today, and
I don't know how much it had to do with it. I mean, you could use any kind of psychology you wanted, but after that happened, we went on a winning streak and wound up winning the pennant. So It might have been the catalyst that we needed to.
Sometimes,
to get up,
sometimes
everybody.
sports teams, especially in baseball, regardless of whether you're superstitious or not, or whatever you choose to believe or whatever you don't believe, okay, sometimes, something happens that out of the clear blue sky that just triggers and, becomes a catalyst and just kind of wakes everything up or wakes everybody up and just, it gets the blood boiling and sometimes that manifests itself into, going on a tear, which the Yankees did at that point. And listen, I'm sure looking back on it now, and of course many of the greats from that time, of course, unfortunately are no longer with us, but they are with us in spirit for sure. But I think if we had the opportunity to gather all of them around us, something tells me that their reactions to everything would be far more humorous today than it was back then, and everything happens for a reason. I mean, generally speaking. So I mean, again, one of many stories that you could tell. And one of the other things I want to cover, kind of shifting gears a little bit. I mean, you were a pretty good, high school ball player in your own right. You pitched. As a matter of fact, and I never, in some of the prior conversations you and I had, this never came up, but, at one point in one of your games where you pitched, you actually faced legendary Hall of Famer Rod Carew and actually forced him to ground out.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's an incredible feat within itself, regardless of anything else.
There were about a dozen scouts at that game scouting Rod Carew, and I wasn't that good a ball player. I was okay, but I wasn't that good. But I pitched against Rod Carew, and I got him to hit a cheap ground ball to second base. Unfortunately, everybody else in the lineup hit me pretty well. So the claim to fame is I got out a Hall of Fame ball player, but it wasn't a good day on the mound for me. It wasn't.
But at the very least, regardless of what else happened, you can still say,
Absolutely.
okay, that you've got the legendary Rod Carew, considered by many, including myself, to probably be having been one of the greatest hitters in the history of the game, and you got him to ground out. And of course, Rod Carew went on to have a Hall of Fame career with the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels and so forth, and of course, was inducted rightfully into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And then, let's kind of dial it back a little bit and kind of go back to that your first opening day, in 1962. You're just getting ready to start as the ball boy. Your April 10th, 1962. Your very first opening day. I mean, talk about the feelings, like whether it be butterflies, whether it be whatever was going through your mind and your emotions, and every part of your body, basically, leading up to that, that opening day.
Well, the excitement obviously was there. I was going to be on the Yankee Stadium field with Major League ball players in a Major League game, even though being just the ball boy. But it might be explained how I felt in the book, and this may tell it all. What I wanted to do really was, I says, I hope I could make a good catch. I hope somebody with a line drive to me and I can make a good catch,
Yes.
or a hard ground ball and I can make a good catch. I would love to have done that and have the fans maybe cheer for me. And I felt like that all the time. And it was explained here in this page. This is my high school yearbook right here. And it's summed up because this was his opinion of me, and he turned out to be right. It's signed, the front page of my high school yearbook, to Tony, the biggest hot dog bat boy we've had since I've been with the Yankees, your pal Mickey Manel. And that's his signature. And he summed it up pretty well. I was a hot dog. The only two that were bigger hot dogs to me is, from what I saw, Reggie Jackson and Joe Pepitone. But I was up there with them even as a 16-year-old kid. But that's a great thing that I have in the book. And it turns out it winds up being on page 107. And that wasn't planned, but I just, there was some irony in that.
Absolutely. Mickey Mantle, of course, having worn number 7 for the Yankees a number that, of course, has since been retired, and again, that opening day obviously kicks off the what ends up being the 3 years. But you start going on the road with the team in your second year. You room with another Yankee legend, Tony Kubek, who went on to become a broadcaster for the Yankees years later for the Toronto Blue Jays. He also, of course, was part of the NBC Saturday Game of the Week, having broadcasted with the legendary Bob Costas. I mean, growing up in the 70s and 80s, the Saturday Game of the Week was a big part of my childhood, and we used to either get Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola, or we got the Bob Costas, Tony Kubek game, depending upon, again, which game was being shown in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state region, if you will. And but Tony Kubek back in the day was, in his own right, a phenomenal ball player, shortstop, and you room with Tony Kubek on the very first road trip. Tell us about that experience, that very first road trip with the Yankees, and rooming with Tony, and
Well, that happened. That happened in the second year. The ball boys back. I don't know
in the
what
second
happens
year.
then.
Yes, correct.
The first year, you just work the clubhouse.
You pay your dues basically
Right.
the first year.
But
yeah.
the second and third years when I got to travel with them, and
Yes.
I did room with Tony Kubek one year. But the fun actually started when they let me have my own room, all by myself, almost all the time that I traveled, and that was where I had a lot of fun. That's a few interesting stories that are in the book
Yes.
about things that my experiences when I was traveling with them. But the excitement of the first time I was on a plane, it happened to be a prop plane. And I'm sitting by the window and I see like flames or fire coming out of the engine. And I said, this doesn't look good. I asked one of the ball players, and he said, no, that's normal. That's maybe in your world it's normal, but I'm up 30,000 feet and seeing flames coming out of a plane. It just scared the heck out of me. But after a while, you get used to anything. And there were some ball players. For instance, there was a ball player, Steve Hamilton. He was deathly afraid to fly. Deathly afraid to fly. He used to sit there in that chair and say his rosary beads while we were flying. And, that's just the way the other guys, it was just no big deal. Ball players would play cards in the back because we had our own plane. But you know what? After a while, the traveling experience is something you just get used to. I was lucky enough to travel for 2 World Series also.
Absolutely.
I went to LA and St. Louis. And those experiences, I still say today, anytime I do a speaking thing, I think I appreciate it more now than I did then, because, then you just take it for granted. I mean,
Plus, you're mesmerized back then as it's
Absolutely.
happening. And as the years go by, and you're able to, look back, and you're able to really, appreciate the significance of the opportunity that you had, back then. And I realize, with everything that happened in the 3 years, I mean, everything you witnessed and experienced, there's so many stories, so many moments, but to the best of your, to the best of your ability, I should say, if you had to pick, let's say, the most defining moment or the greatest moment of the 3 years, okay, what comes to mind, would you say, as the absolute greatest moment that you witnessed or experienced throughout that entire magical 3-year run?
Well, it wasn't so much an experience. Again, my idol was Mickey Mantle, obviously.
Yes.
I put his picture with me on the book for 2 reasons. One, Mickey Mantle was my hero, and 2, anybody sees Mickey Mantle's picture, they want to buy the book. So that's the other reason I put his picture on the book. But there was one incident with Mickey Mantle that was one of those touching moments. And I have the story in the book. He was out on they called it the disabled list back then. And he wasn't playing for a month or 2 months, I don't remember actually. and he's in the outfield now. He's getting ready to come off, and we're shagging fly balls. And, you know, I stayed close to him, and I'm trying to catch the ball. And every time that day, he just kept running in front of me and catching the ball. He did 3 or 4 times. So I looked at him. I says, come on, Nick, when are you going to let me catch the ball? And he started laughing, and he just came over to me. And when he came over to me, he said, because every time he touched the ball, people were screaming because he hadn't played in so long. And he says, why do these people love me so much? And I just looked at him and said, well, I says, it can't be your looks because they'd love me more than you. And he started laughing, and we started laughing, and batting practice was over, and we went into the dugout. So the game went on, and he wasn't in the starting lineup. And then about in the 8th inning, they call him to pitch hit. And what does Mickey Mantle do? He does what Mickey Mantle did. He hits a home run. And he goes back to the dugout. The inning is over, and I'm finished taking care of the bats. And at the end of the inning, I went to sit down next to him. And I just looked at him, and it says, that's why they love you so much. And he was touched by that. And he just grabbed my head and shook my head because he knew where I was going. And that's one of the stories that I really like in the book. And one of the things that I remember really about, you know, Mickey Mantle, my hero. But that's one of the real good ones. But there's a lot of stories about there. You want me to tell them one of the things where they got me real good?
Why not? Go for it. I was going to bring it up anyway, so
Okay.
You beat me to the punch, but let's...
We were in Chicago, and this happens to be the same time zone where the Phil Linz happened. That Phil Linz incident with the harmonica was afterwards.
Yes.
But before that, we're taking batting practice, and it's raining, and they had the big drums on the field that the tarpaulin was on. So the tarpaulin's on the field, and we're still taking batting practice. So... these days, they get a foul ball, they throw it in the stands, the bat boys could give them away. It wasn't like that back then. They wanted all the balls. So I still think today that this was a plan, but they put 2 or 3 balls in one of the drums that was in the outfield. And Frank Rossetti, who was the coach, he was in charge of the baseballs. And I'm in the outfield, and he says, Tony, you got to get those balls. So I said, Crow, they called him Crow. He said, it's filthy in there. He said, no, you got to get them. So there were like 3 or 4 balls in there. So there were 2 right in the front. I grabbed them and I threw them in. And he says, you got to get the other ones too. Now, you know, I'm a streetwise guy, little kid from Little Italy, but I didn't see it coming. But now when I think about it, I think they got me. So I says, I'm going to get filthy if I go. Just get them right away. You could lean in and get them. So I did. And while I was in there, I know it was Mickey Mantle. I think it was Dale Long. It might have been Johnny Blanchard. We're in center field, and they started rolling me in this thing from center field to left field to right field, a little at a time. And there's an echo in those things. And there's 30, 40,000 people in the stands. And they heard words they never heard before because I was screaming in there. And when I came out, I was just filthy black. I couldn't work. And they had to get one of the form with the bat boys that they have for visiting teams, because I couldn't. I was just so filthy. My uniform was black. And that's one of the things where they used to really get me once in a while. But, you know, you don't fool around with somebody unless you like them or they hate. I didn't think they hated me. They just wanted to break my chops. So
exactly.
They did. That's one of the stories. And there's several stories like that in the book. You know, I get emails from people telling me they read the book or a friend bought them for them. And they tell me about, some of them are so touching to me because they say, you brought me back to my childhood and stuff like that. And one guy just contacted me a couple of days ago, and he told me his father used to bring him to a restaurant that we had in Little Italy. And he said the story was, I don't know if it's legend, that in the restaurant was called Florio's restaurant.
Yes, your father's restaurant that he opened in 1965. Yes.
Right. And he says, I don't know if it was legend, because I was a little kid, that a bat boy for the Yankees was part of the place. And it turns out I asked him, I gave him a phone number to call me, and we started talking, and we knew a lot of people, the same people, and he had to order 3 books for him, his son, his cousin, and this and that. But it was so, that's one of the things that this book has brought me. I've met people from 50, 60 years ago that I just can't believe have contacted me because of this over the last several years. And that's part of the fun with this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember in reading the book myself, going, you talk a lot about fan mail that you used to receive during the time that you were the Bad Boy, and you actually have some copies of some of that in the book. And I remember you pointing out that one of the most touching pieces of fan mail was actually from somebody who wasn't a Yankee fan. Okay, she was a Detroit Tiger fan, and you helped get a autograph.
She was a nun.
Yes,
she was a nun. Yes,
Sister Paul Mikel or Michael. I'm not sure how she pronounced
Sister
it.
Paul Michelle.
Paul Michelle.
Sister
Okay,
Paul
so
Michelle. Yeah.
and and you had meant, she sent you this a very heartfelt.
I have a
letter.
Copy of the card in the book.
A copy of that is in the book.
Yeah.
Along with a lot of other copies of the fan mails I mentioned. And ironically, she's not even a Yankee fan. She was a diehard Detroit Tiger fan, and you helped facilitate getting for her a ball autographed by all the Detroit Tigers. And something that she obviously cherished and treasured, for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And everything. So I mean, not only were the point that I'm ultimately trying to make here is that you not only did you experience lifetime moments that have not only shaped your life, but have you have these memories and what have you that you take with you basically wherever you go. But you, whether you realized it or not at the time, you were touching so many other lives and giving other people memories that they have cherished for the remainder of their lives as well. Okay, so, and you probably didn't realize that at the time, but you obviously were doing that. Okay, so while you were on the receiving end of these magical moments, you were indirectly also basically dishing out magical moments to others. Okay, and now you're beginning to realize, by virtue of the book and all the contacts you've had from it, you're beginning to really begin to see, the positive and inspirational effect that your story has had in so many different ways on so many different people from so many different walks of life.
Well, you're bringing that up. I'll give you an example, and the story is in the book. That again, when you're 16 or 17 years old, you're doing something, but when you get older, and I reflect on what I did with so many people.
Yes.
But this one comes to mind. I used to get these fan mails from little boys, little girls, some bigger girls, some older guys, and crazy questions and everything. But I got this one from Chicago, and all he wanted was one autograph. Could you get me one autograph? And I couldn't just keep sending autographs out because everybody wanted an autograph.
Of course,
could you get me a souvenir? Could you get me a cracked bag? But this one kid asked for one autograph, and the key with this kid, his name was Tony Florio.
Yep.
And I saw it, and I said, you know what? Back then you could dial, what was it, 911 or 411 and get
411 for information.
So
yes.
I got the kid's address, and I got the phone number, and I called up the house in Chicago.
What are the odds of the same name?
Right.
Murfreesboro, Illinois, to be precise, was where
Was that
this,
where it was?
Yep.
So I call up, and I get the mom on the phone, and I says, hello, I'd like to speak to Anthony Florio. I said, so my name is Anthony Florio. He sent me a letter. I'm the bat boy for the Yankees. And, she says, who's fooling around? I said, oh, I really am. I said, your son sent me a letter and this and that. So she realized I wasn't kidding around. And I says, I just want you to know, I'm not going to be sending him an autograph. And this is one of the things that I got to do for people that made me feel good. I think I feel more better about it now, or happy about it now than then. But I says, I'm not going to send him an autograph, but what I will do, I'm going to be in Chicago in a couple of weeks, and what I'd like to do is get 4 tickets for your family. You just go to Will Call, and then when you get there, just look for me or wave, and have Anthony come down, and I'll get him an autograph live. And I got to do that for this kid. And when you say, touched people's life, I don't know if little Anthony Florio, I mean, he was obviously younger than me, but I don't know if he's alive or not anymore, but I would bet anything that he remembers that day.
I bet
he
the house
better
on
than
it.
I do, So I got to do little things like that, and there was so many people I gave, a cracked bat to, and you can't do that today. I mean, but I got to do all these little things, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
While you were living your dream, essentially, okay, and while your, dreams were coming true, okay, you were indirectly, okay, helping other people, helping other people's dreams come true, okay. And again, you obviously couldn't realize it at the time, understandably, but the story with little Anthony Florio from Murfreesboro, Illinois, is a prime example, okay, to say the least. And whether or not little Anthony Florio, we'll call him little Anthony Florio for the time being, is still with us or not, I would imagine that he undoubtedly, okay, remembers the entire situation, and perhaps that should be a project. We should try to look him up, and see if we can track him down. Okay, it shouldn't be that difficult today with the internet and all the technology at our disposal. But again, what are the odds that a young boy with the same name as you, no relation, would send you that letter and reach out to you and everything. And again, it's just, one of the countless moments and stories that you can reflect upon from, what was only a 3-year period. Okay. Imagine, had you been able to be there longer than 3 years. I mean, but,
I tried.
Yeah, I know. I know you tried, and you came close. Okay, you came close, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. But still, we're only talking about a 3-year period. So much happened in the 3-year period, and needless to say, it's just off the charts in terms of the memories and the stories and the experiences, and basically, as you point out in the book, how basically that, everything that happened those 3 years kind of really set the stage, for you for the rest of your life, and everything else that you endeavored into afterwards. You were shaped, obviously, and understandably, significantly by that, that 3-year run with the Yankees. And how could you not be, of course, okay? We talked about, we briefly mentioned a few minutes ago about your father opening the famous Florio's restaurant in 1965, which you worked at for many, many years, and, got the opportunity to also meet a variety of celebrities,
Right.
Serve a lot of celebrities. I made a note of a few of them, we'll kind of go through that, because, a tremendous experience. We're talking the famous, the Florios became famous for the calzones and among other things, but we're talking Jackie Leonard, Ed Sullivan, Kate Smith, former A-Team actor George Papard, the legendary singer Jerry Vale, Barbara Streisand, who swore you to secrecy, about revealing her identity. Yeah. She didn't want everybody to realize it was her, and she wanted, and then of course Nancy Sinatra, Sonny Fox, who we mentioned before, with the Wonderama, and he was also. But let's talk about the story of the kiss. Sophia Loren. Okay.
Not too many people could say they gave Sophia Loren a kiss. Yeah,
But you can.
Yeah, I can.
Tell us about that experience.
They came in for doing a photo shoot for some magazine or something, and she was there, and I mean, she was just drop dead gorgeous. And, again, I was at that time maybe 18 or 19 years old, and I would have ran away with her, but she wouldn't do that. But says, before you leave, I got to give you a kiss. And she had no problem with it, so I got to kiss Sophia Loren, which is pretty good.
Like you said, not many people, can attest to that.
That was almost as good as Mickey Mantle, but it was pretty
a close second.
It was
a close second. Yeah. And speaking of other experiences overall, during the 3 years and beyond the 3 years, one of the other sections of the book that I found very enchanting was your experience in getting to know, of course, the late, great former Yankee shortstop, and then, of course, broadcaster, Hall of Famer, Philrosuto. Philrosuto, tell us about the experience of him teaching you how to bunt.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely the greatest bunter that ever lived. And, I wasn't a great hitter, obviously. Just a little guy. I wasn't a power hitter or anything, but he taught me, he showed me a few things on how to lay down a bunt. And no disrespect to these ball players today, but they don't even know how to bunt the ball. And it's such a simple thing to do, and he made it so simple. And he, I've seen him in training programs that he showed people how to do it. And it's really, and you get these guys today that are getting $20 million a year, they don't know how to lay down a bunt. But
well, I would bet the house, I would hazard to say that the scooter is probably rolling over in his grave.
Oh.
When he, looking down upon the game today, and how you very rarely, see a bunt in today's game. And you're right. I would bet the house that the majority of the ball players today, probably can't, execute a proper bunt to save their lives. And I'm sure it's driving the scooter, crazy up in heaven, watching down, and how drastically the game, has changed over the years, and I'm still a diehard baseball fan, always will be. I know I personally, am not a fan of some of the things that have changed in today's game, and so forth. It's definitely a much different game today than what you experienced back in the 60s. I still love the game. It's still America's pastime, our national pastime. It's still, in my opinion, the greatest sport, of all. But it's definitely not the same, quality of a game, as it used to be.
Yeah.
This ghost runner thing with the extra innings drives me crazy, to the point where if I'm watching a game and it goes into extra innings, I literally have to change the channel and just move on to something else, because I literally cannot watch Major League Baseball. I just can't watch a ghost runner go to second base.
The whole game is different.
I can't watch it.
I wanted to let you one thing about you brought up Rizzuto. I got to know Rizzuto because he was finished playing when I got there. Mm-hmm. But he was doing the announcing, and that's when I had more contact with him, because he'd come in the clubhouse and we'd speak.
Yep.
But after I left the Yankees, everybody knows Rizzuto stories about the Ganolis coming to the thing. I'm one of the guys that used to bring him the Ganolis from Ferrara's in
which was across the street from the Florio's restaurant.
Right. So I got to meet him, and I think there's a story in the book. I used to go up to the press box if I went to a game. And this one time, I asked for Rizzuto. I told him the guy who I was, and Rizzuto came out with a jacket on that was about 4 sizes too big. I says, "Where'd you get that jacket?" He says, "Oh, I'm a real huckleberry. I just threw coffee all over myself. This is White's jacket." But he was very, very down to earth. He came to the restaurant.
He was a character.
He came to the restaurant, and he'd go get Ferraris and come back. Pizza, take home. Just a genuinely nice guy. Nothing pretentious about him at all. Like Yogi, that's why they were such close friends.
Yes, they were.
Yogi was, what you saw is what you got, and any kind of stigma attached to Yogi Berra that he was stupid or dumb. He was dumb like a fox. He was a very, very sharp guy. Very sharp guy. So, but,
no question about it. Now, we've talked so much about so many different parts of the book in such a short period of time here today, and we can certainly go on and on. But I want to make sure that we take a moment to specify, Anthony, and please help me. Okay, please tell everybody, okay, how they can get a hold of this book, how they can obtain a copy of this great book, so that they can relive and enjoy all of the things that we're talking about.
To get the book, you can go to nyybadboy.com. That's a website to see the book. Or you can go, I'll give you my Gmail. It's Anthony R. Florio at gmail.com, and I could give you another way to get the book. The other thing, with the Gmail, I've told Anthony, I've done a lot of shows. I do a speaking thing for between an hour and a half. They're a lot of fun. This is nothing compared to what the shows are like. It's a different kind of thing, but the shows are a lot of fun. And if you go to the Anthony R. Florio at gmail.com, contact me. Right now I'm going to be doing shows in Florida for April, January, February, and March. And then I start booking shows when I come back up here from April to usually October. But I can tell you, the book is a lot of fun. It's just the real life funny stories that the luckiest kid in New York got to experience for 3 years. It's just that simple. And I can't tell you this, when I do my shows, women enjoy it as much as the guys do. I've had men's clubs tell me, you do a show for our men's club. I won't do it unless you invite the women. And the women come up to me after a show and they say, this was so much fun, I can't believe the stories. I don't know anything about baseball, but this was so funny and this and that. So, and I've done a bunch of women's clubs too, and they just love it. And I've met people doing these shows that you can't believe. I had one lady, you talk about fanatic baseball, her whole car was pinstriped. The whole entire car is pinstriped. They thought it was my car. People that came in, is that your car? I said, no, that's not mine. That's the crazy lady over there in the corner. But like I said, it's a fun book. The books are only $20. And with the books, I give away 2 pictures. I give away this picture of me and Mickey Manel in an 8x10. And I also give away another picture. It's when Mickey Manel retired, Bill Gallo, famous sports writer in the city, he did this dedication to Mickey, all in color, 8x10 with all his stats. It's a really pretty collector's piece. So I give the 2 pictures away with the books. But the stories are what's funny. It's just, I do the shows because that's my fun. The book is the book, but people asking me questions, and I look at people telling me they cried when Mickey Mantle died, and I said, so did I. And I tell stories like a few of the stories that I told now, and I see people just sitting there with their mouths open, like in awe of, did it really happen? Was he really like that?
Yep.
Did you really do that? And that's the enjoyment I get out of this book more than anything else.
Well, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, again, having read it cover to cover as I did, I enjoyed it immensely. And I mean, even if I wasn't a Yankee fan, okay, I would have enjoyed it. Of course, being a Yankee fan and being a big fan of the history of the Yankees and the history of baseball in general, and being a very nostalgic person as I am, I mean, it was right up my alley. I mean, so it's without question a great, fun read. And it's so much fun to listen to the stories. I mean, we could be here forever, trying to, chronicle everything that happened, everything that you experienced. And I know we've kind of been bouncing around trying to, hit as many different areas and topics as we could. But Anthony, I mean, there's no question that this was a magical time. Again, an experience that basically set the stage for the rest of your life. Kind of it shaped everything, that your life consisted of afterwards. You worked several years with your father in the restaurant business with Florio's, and then you eventually moved on into some other careers. You got into banking and stock brokerage, and you also you opened a luncheonette at one point in the 70s in the Soho section. You were in real estate at one point, selling condominiums and what have you. You also had a restaurant in Hoboken. You also worked for Direct Waste Services. Of course, that was led by our dearly departed mutual friend who we lost a little over a year ago, the late great Johnny Ganoli. So you've had a very diversified career, and you've worked in a lot of different fields. You've covered a lot of ground, and of course you have I think Matt, you were married twice. You have two sons, one from each marriage, Anthony Jr. and of course, and your youngest Matthew. And you have, was it one grandchild, or do you have a couple of grandchild?
One grandchild.
One grandchild, Edward. Okay, born in 2013, as I recall. And so I mean, just kind of take us a little bit through, all the different careers you've had, and how the overall experience kind of, shaped you and kind of led you in all those different directions.
Well, almost every job, or as I remember, a lot of the jobs all started with a conversation. What have you done? Well, I did this, but I was the bat boy for the Yankees. Whoa, really?
Yep.
And
all roads led back to that.
Yes, that one sentence opened up a lot of doors for me.
Exactly.
It really did. Because when you could get anybody, speaking with anybody, you get them to drop their shoulders and relax, and now start listening to stuff, their whole attitude changes, and they become more receptive to whatever you have to say. And
you capture their attention,
yeah, it has
to say the least.
Yeah, it just, it really did open up a lot of doors for me. A lot of people ask me, why did it take you so long to write the book? And I tell them, I go, well, I wrote the book, it must be 7 or 8 years ago that I wrote the book. And I said, well,
2015.
I said, well, first I saw my son's student loans. I says, uh-oh. So I says, maybe I'll write a book. But the real thing is, I said I was going to do it. And I told a lot of people I was going to do it. I told my son I was going to do it. I told my wife I'm going to write a book. And a lot of times people, yeah, all right, you're going to write a book, you're going to write a book. And I have a saying. That I try to live by. And, I try to live by it all the time. It's don't make your mouth write a check your ass ain't going to cash. If you say you're going to do something, do it.
Of course.
And it did take 6 years to write the book. I'm very happy the way it came out. I wrote it with this, like I said, this fellow, John Sinclair, and it took us 6 years to do it. And it takes 6 years to write the book because things happen. You get sick, you can't think of more stories and everything. Yeah. But
life gets in the way at times, unfortunately.
People die, you get sick. I mean, things happen. But I'm very happy with the way it turned out, and the responses I get from people that read the book just makes it all really worthwhile to me.
I couldn't agree more. And again, I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I know that anybody who has not yet obtained this book and has not yet read it is going to absolutely go gaga for it once they do. And I can't recommend it enough, folks, to pick up Anthony Florio's book and curl yourself up, whether it be on a couch or in your car or your office, wherever it is that you choose to do your reading from. And I would also recommend, just the old-fashioned way, getting the actual book and physically, just holding it in your hand and reading through it. The old-fashioned way is the best, has the best effect, and I can't recommend it enough. And Anthony, I tell you, again, we can go on and everything. I mean, there's so much that we can, dive deeper into. And I thank you, so much for the time that you have, graciously given me today. I know you have a lot to finish up and to get ready for your journey to Florida. And of course, you're heading to Florida at the, the perfect time, because it won't be long before pitchers and catchers report for spring training. We're essentially only about maybe 4 or 5 weeks, give or take, from from pitchers and catchers reporting for spring training for what will be the upcoming 2025 season, and so forth. But I know you have so much going on, and I can't thank you enough for squeezing in some time for me today. And again, I know we've been trying to put this together for a while. Thank you so much for your patience.
No problem.
It's such an honor to have you as part
of
Cessa's Corner.
My pleasure, Anthony.
Oh, thank you. And I also want to send a thank you out to my cousins Sal and Debbie Ippolito, who helped introduce me to you. And that's how I got the opportunity to get in touch with you and find out about the book. My cousin Sal and my mother are first cousins, and him and his wife Debbie reside in Nutley, and we're very close with them. And he's going to be so excited to hear that we finally conducted this interview. So Sal and Debbie, thank you, and again, Anthony, thank you. So you, without question, were not only the luckiest kid in New York during that magical 3-year run, 1962 to 1964. But I would hazard to say, and I think we've proven it by virtue of this interview, this discussion, everything that we've covered and talked about today here on Cessa's Corner. But I think it's safe to say that you were not only the luckiest kid in New York back then, but you, to this day, are without question one of the luckiest men total, period, in life, for having the experience that you had and what you've brought back to life with the book, and traveling, doing all these shows, now getting the opportunity later this year to go to Michigan, as you mentioned before. I would say that you're one of the lucky ones from the standpoint of, you were the luckiest kid, but you're definitely one of the luckiest men that I've ever known. And God bless you. I wish you, continued success with the book and the shows, and I'm looking forward to us, getting together again when you get back. We'll go out for dinner and talk more about all the stories, because again, there's so many stories that we can talk about them forever. But folks, again, can't recommend enough, checking out the book, as Anthony said before, nybatboy.com, anthonyrflorio@gmail.com. Reach out, get your hands on this book. You will absolutely enjoy it. Anthony, once again, thank you so much. Safe travels, my friend.
Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your support, your ongoing support of Cessa's Corner. If you haven't already done so, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel under Anthony M. Cessa, where you'll be able to witness this episode of Cessa's Corner, all of the prior episodes, and all of my future episodes to come. Again, we thank you all for your support. Again, happy, healthy New Year to all. Anthony, thank you again. God bless everyone. And again, the luckiest kid in New York and the luckiest man in general right here, Anthony Florio. Thank you, everyone.